Andy Johnson, Minnesota State University. This is a pre-recording of a webinar on how to teach grammar, and grammar is in parentheses, or teach is in parentheses, and you'll see why that is. How to teach grammar. First of all, I've got a website, and who doesn't have a website? www.teaching-reading.com. Lots of resources there. My podcasts and YouTubes and contact information there. So if you want some more information, books, etc., go there. My podcast, The Reading Instruction Show, lots of stuff related to literacy and learning, including stuff on teaching grammar. But first, if you want to help students become better writers, you must teach the process. We teach the process, the 5-step writing process, to develop the skill. Many of the bad writers I see in higher education here at Minnesota State University, they have not reached their full potential because they have not been taught the process. We think we can create better writers by describing the product, but we do not teach them how to generate ideas, how to organize ideas, how to revise, how to edit. Instead, we just say, it must look like this, your paper. I highly recommend this book by Constance Weaver. Everything that I have read of hers is very good. It's research-based, teaching grammar in context. I think this was published in 92 or 96. Still a great resource to use. So let's start. Why does the word grammar send shudders up and down the spine of most middle and high school students? Perhaps it's because some of the myths or silly ideas that have perpetuated around grammar. 7 silly ideas are presented first, and here you see kind of an overview of the things that we're going to look at in tonight's webinar on teaching in parentheses or in quotation marks grammar. First of all, 8 silly ideas related to teaching grammar. First, silly idea number 1. In order to be effective, grammar instruction has to be boring and meaningless. Truth is not. It should be taught in the context of real, authentic writing. That takes care of the meaningless part to become more meaningful. And any instruction should be direct, brisk, and quickly paced. Silly idea number 2, and this is the silliest of silly ideas. In order to be able to be an effective writer, you must be able to identify all these grammar sub-entities. And I say, pish posh. What's a gerund? What's an adverbial phrase? I don't know, but yet somehow I and many others are still able to write textbooks and other things without being able to identify a prepositional phrase or a past participle. These have nothing to do with creating meaning with print, with writing. We need to know these things, some of these ideas, but it's just a small part. Silly idea number 3, and this is a traditional idea. If students are having trouble writing, they just need a little bit more grammar instruction. If they just had a little bit more grammar instruction, then they would be good writers. And the truth is sometimes an overemphasis on the writing sub-skills such as grammar makes it more difficult to write. Because instead of seeing writing in a holistic or global sense, writing becomes associated with a myriad of tiny little sub-skills. As you're going to see throughout tonight's presentation, teaching grammar in isolation does very little to improve the quality of students' writing or students' ability to use writing in real life writing and speaking situations. We must teach the process. Silly idea number 4. Good writers must be good grammarians. Or one must be a good grammarian to be a good writer? Truth, if this were the case, grammarians would be our best-selling authors. If this were the case, grammarians would be our Pulitzer Prize winners. Excuse me. This is not the case. You need to know some of the basics of grammar, but you don't have to be a grammarian. Silly idea number 5, teaching grammar outside a meaningful context improves students' ability to use it in real life writing and speaking situations. That means teaching using separate grammar worksheets and separate grammar classes and grammar exercise books. The truth is, studying grammar outside the context of authentic writing and speaking contexts actually makes it more difficult for these skills to transfer to real life writing, little transfer to real life speaking situations. Silly idea number 6, that students can learn how to use grammar without lots and lots of writing practice. Now, could you learn to play the piano without practicing the piano? Authentic writing is writing to express their ideas, their thoughts, to provide information that they want to provide in a way that they want to provide it. Students need daily writing practice. Need practice of any skill to become better. Would you be a better volleyball player without daily volleyball practice, daily piano practice, daily reading practice? We need daily writing practice if we want to help our students develop their full potential as writers. Silly idea number 7. You can teach writing and grammar effectively without being a writer. The truth is, all teachers of writing must write and share their thoughts with their students so you understand the process, so you can use that as a model, as a guide. Boys and girls, when I was writing, I was having trouble with this sentence, so I... Would you take piano lessons from someone who didn't play the piano? So why should you take writing lessons from someone who doesn't write? Teachers of writing must be writers. Silly idea number 8. Simply correcting students' papers is a good way to teach grammar. And in truth, papers need responses. We need to respond to ideas. We do need to make some corrections. But if you only correct, if you only point out the mistakes, students begin to think that good writing is error-free writing. They become reflexive. They write in such a way not to create meaning or to communicate thoughts, but to avoid errors. So, a grammar overview. Some basic ideas. What it is. Grammar is a study of the way our language works. It describes the structure of the language. Grammar was invented to enhance understanding, to limit error transmission or transmission errors. It's a study of the way the language works, different from writing. The purpose of writing, we forget this, is not to be error-free. The purpose of writing, we write to record ideas, to create, to transmit, to express ideas and information. We use words and symbols to do this. Grammar is a means to an end, not an end in and of itself. The purpose of writing is not to produce error-free writing. The purpose of writing is to record, create, transmit, express ideas and information. Traditional grammar instruction, a descriptive approach, diagramming sentences, describe this is what must be, this is what a sentence must be. It prescribes. Now this makes sense if you already know the language. Diagramming sentences already makes sense if you already know a lot about grammar. But if you're just trying to figure it out and learn how to write, does nothing. There's no research to support the effectiveness of teaching grammar over here and writing over there. And we'll get to that in a bit. But this descriptive, prescriptive approach, very little research, if any, to support the effectiveness of this to enhance the quality of students' compositions, the quality of their writing. diagramming sentences? Who invented that anyway? A grammarian did. That's who did, not a writer. Grammar instruction does very little in and of itself to enhance the quality of students' writing. The study of grammar and mechanics outside an authentic writing context does very little to enhance the quality of students' composition. Little relationship. It does not teach students, and I'm going to hammer on this idea all night long. Grammar instruction doesn't teach students the process, how to generate ideas, how to organize ideas, to shape ideas. Grammar is not writing. Grammar instruction is a means to an end. It's not an end in and of itself. Correlation. Interesting study by Bromley. Correlation means the correlation. A perfect correlation is 100% of the time. Found that the correlation between grammar knowledge and math ability was higher than the correlation between grammar knowledge and writing ability, or the composition, the quality of composition. Very little correlation. It's time spent composing, writing, has a more positive effect both on grammar, students' ability to use grammar, and the quality of their writing. They learn how to use the rules and mechanics as they write and get responses from others. They are learning how to mean. Mechanics are important. When I say mechanics, I mean grammar, punctuation, and spelling, but they're done in step 4 during editing, not during the other steps. Big idea. We don't teach writing and speaking as much as we create the conditions where students can learn how to write and speak. They are skills to be developed, not content to be taught. You learn best by doing. Grammar is learned best if it's most of it is done inductively and implicitly. Think of how you learn to speak. How do you learn to use correct grammar? You are immersed in it, and you responded and were responded to. This does not mean that we don't have direct and explicit instruction. Yes, it does. Yes, we do. But it's short bits of direct and explicit instruction. As a teacher, you must attend to your own grammar. You must be a role model. You must use correct words and correct grammar as you write and share your ideas. Make sure you are using correct grammar, and I'll show you at the end. I'll show you 7 common grammar errors. Grammar instruction must be direct and explicit. Explicit instruction is necessary, but it's not sufficient. More doesn't always mean better. And when I say direct instruction, that means it should be directly taken directly from students' own writing. That is the most direct instruction you can have. Directly from their writing, directly based on their writing, and explicit. And I'll show you a little bit more of this. But yeah, direct instruction is important, little bits of it. More of it doesn't mean better. So, common approaches to grammar instruction. Well, the standalone or isolated approach, that's the traditional approach. That's where you taught grammar over here in isolation, grammar worksheets, grammar class, rhetoric, whatever you call it, and writing over there. Little transfer. The immersion approach, very few people would recommend that. That's where you're simply immersed in writing without any instruction at all. Most literacy specialists, writing specialists, would recommend the embedded approach, where grammar instruction, short bits, mini lessons, is embedded in students' authentic writing, within the context of their writing. That is the most effective, greatest amount of transfer of these skills to real-life teaching and writing situation. So, whether you're in kindergarten, you have students in kindergarten, or in graduate school, and I've taught them all, and I'm teaching a graduate level writing course now. The same things I describe for kindergarten students, same concepts apply for teaching writing at the graduate level. Some tips: lots and lots of authentic writing practice every day. If students know they're going to write every day, they begin thinking about their writing, what they want to write about outside the school context as they're coming to school. Practice every day. Writing practice, reading practice. And here's the thing about writing and reading. They reinforce each other. When I taught composition at the University of Minnesota, freshman comp, I could tell those students in high school who read a lot and those who didn't. Those who didn't read, their language sounded like high school kids talking. Those students who had read a lot, they understood the more formal nature of writing. They had an implicit understanding of the structure of language. Worksheets. Nothing's wrong. There's nothing wrong with a worksheet. It's a tool, a valuable tool. Any tool's effectiveness is dependent on how it's used. There are means to an end, not an end in and of itself. But the goal of instruction is not to complete a worksheet. The goal of instruction is always to become a better writer. Now, I recommend using worksheets in pairs whenever possible, because the conversation that takes place, the social learning, as students are talking and filling these out together, that enhances learning. Remember, the goal is learning and becoming a better writer. It's not in completing a worksheet or mastering a behavioral objective and getting a score to put in your teacher workbook, grade book. Use them judiciously. Nothing wrong with a worksheet. Valuable tool. Keep grammar instruction brief and quickly paced. Mini lessons, as you're going to see, 5 to no more than 15 minutes, depending on the age of students. Skills. No student masters any skill in one encounter. Any skill, whether it be a writing skill, a piano skill, a wrestling skill, is learned gradually over time. You do need some explicit instruction. This is what a noun is. This is what a sentence is. They need very direct and explicit instruction. But it should be short because they're not going to master it. So students need to encounter these things over and over at successively higher levels and in different contexts. Posters. Wonderful. Wonderful. Use posters for reminders. Look for common mistakes that students are making in their writing. That becomes the basis of your lessons, and have these reminders up on the wall. As a tool, you can say, oh yeah, boys and girls, as we remembered, and you can point to the poster. Students talking about their writing, reading each other's works, asking questions, responding. They get to see that grammar sometimes gets in the way of meaning. And we're going to be talking about pure editing a little bit later. But talking about their writing, responding to each other's writing. This is what I liked. This is what was going through my head. This is what I didn't understand. It was unclear here. Conversations about their writing. And again, whether in kindergarten or in graduate school, adopt and adapt this idea. Promote voluntary reading. One way to help develop a writer's ear, develop an implicit understanding of the sound and structure of the language. Wide reading is the cure for most things related to literacy. Wide reading, informational books as well as narrative texts. What do you teach? Students are your scope and sequence. Look to see what students are struggling with, what skills they're struggling with. Look at their writing, listen to their speech. That tells you what you need to teach. Not some silly scope and sequence chart. I call it a scope and nonsense chart. No, you don't learn to write by mastering a sequence of skills. And as I said, grammar skills are mastered over time. You don't achieve mastery of anything with a single exposure. You need to revisit and review at successively higher levels. Now, a quick bit on the elements of effective skills instruction, otherwise called direct instruction. And yes, use direct instruction, elements of effective. So you're teaching a skill, a grammar skill. Wonderful. This is what you do. It should be directly related to students' writing. That's direct instruction. Brief and quickly paced, and use the elements, 5 elements of effective skills instruction. Teaching a skill of any kind has these 5 elements. It's purposeful. It has a purpose, a defined purpose. Your goal is not to have an interesting activity. It's to learn something specific. So you should be able to say, students will learn about or learn how to, and insert whatever you want them to know right there. 1 sentence. It's purposeful, not just having a fun experience or an activity. Input. This is where you tell them exactly what they need to know. Direct instruction and modeling. Introduce the new grammar skill. Define it. Demonstrate how it's used. Give them examples and non-examples. This is a compound sentence. This is not a compound sentence. This is a clause. This is an essential clause. This is a non-essential clause. Input and modeling. But that is kept relatively short because they're not going to master it in your single lesson. Remember that. Students never master anything in a single encounter. So don't spend a lot of time. The time you're spending in direct instruction is time taken away from writing and composing. Always keep that in mind. Guided practice is the key to teaching any skill. Guided practice, a key part of teaching any skill. Here, the teacher takes the whole class through a skill, provides support with a gradual release of responsibility so that students eventually are able to use the skill independently. It's also a form of dipsticking to see if students are getting the skill. In using worksheets, a common example of this is you do the first 3 together. You do the next 3 with a buddy, and you're listening to them, and you do the next 3 by themselves, and you're going around to see if students have got the skill. That is guided practice with a gradual release of responsibility. And then independent practice invites students to use the skill they've just been learned, to practice their learning. If done correctly, independent practice, students should be able to succeed with a 95% success ratio. Ideally, independent practice is done through an authentic writing activity. Now, there's times when assignments and activities such as worksheets are appropriate. Yes, nothing wrong with a worksheet once in a while. It's a tool. It can be a valuable tool. And the last part, as I said, you do not learn or master any skill in a single setting. You must expect to revisit and review at successively higher levels throughout the year from one grade to the next. Revisit, review at successively higher levels. Okay, let's look at some specific strategies. Oh, by the way, skills instruction, as I said, direct instruction, 5 to no more than 15 minutes. Keep it closer to 5. I cannot imagine any case that goes longer than 5. 5 to 8 is what you should shoot for. And then get on to the business of writing. All right, some strategies. 10 of them. First of all, daily oral language. And some of these are you've seen before. Daily oral language, nothing new or exciting about that, but let's use it. It's a sentence or 2 on the board. You present it with grammar or sometimes punctuation errors. And again, these should be, here's an example. She didn't read the book. The ball hit Molly on the head. They should be based on the types of errors that you're seeing in students' writing. And you can create these also if I want to reinforce a letter sounder pattern. Let's say I'm teaching the short I sound to a second grade. Well, to a second grade student. Okay, well, I'm creating some daily oral language with short I words in it. This is how you reinforce letter sounds and patterns. Based on the errors, importance of having students write a lot, importance of you observing students writing and reading their writing. Daily oral language, you call on one student at a time to come up and correct one error. Allows other students to hear their thinking. Oh, tell me why you made that change. And the student is describing. That's a good thing. Quick mini lesson as the student is making the correction. Yes, that's right. That's the beginning of a sentence. It needs a capital letter. Yes, that's right. This sentence isn't a complete idea. It doesn't make sense by itself. Excuse me. Sentence could be related to things they're reading about. You could have sentences related to a science lesson or a social studies lesson. Design your own sentences, of course, based on students' lives. Yes, absolutely. The nice thing about this, if you're an elementary or middle school teacher, is you don't have your separate classrooms. Everything begins to merge after a while. Sentence combining. This is a research-based strategy. Lots of research supporting this. Students are given 2, maybe sometimes 3 sentences on a board or someplace else. Could be an incomplete sentence, could be a whole sentence. But students have to combine these 2 sentences into a single sentence, but maintain both ideas and create sentences as short and as effective as possible. And grammar instruction occurs naturally as you talk about what each needs to be a whole and complete idea. The goal is to create effective sentences, not simply a long sentence with a compound connecting the 2. It's to create effective sentences, concise sentences. And here are these conjunctions. Fanboy, for and. These are all conjunctions or connecting, and they need a comma in front. Fanboy. You want to reinforce always that a sentence is a complete idea. It must make sense in and of itself, by itself. By itself. And here I want to reinforce the ill phonogram. So students began to recognize that letter pattern. So I have ill. And being the creative teacher that I am, I could also create these as pre-reading activities. Sentence combining about what they're going to read, or post-reading activities. Sentences about what they just read. I'm reinforcing. Everything becomes one. And of course, when you have the sentence, then you analyze them. Where's the noun or thing word? Where's the verb? Conjunction. Does this make sense? Can you make it shorter? Can you make it better? Adopt and adapt this idea, kindergarten through graduate school. Yes, you can do sentence combining at the graduate level. Absolutely. 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 At the graduate level, what am I teaching students? How to make concise, objective academic language, how to combine ideas and synthesize ideas. Absolutely. Here are some examples. Sentences you can combine at the graduate level. Absolutely. Some more examples, sentence combining, the kinds of things that you can use. A lot of these activities you'll notice are at the sentence level. Why do you think that is? All right, the third idea, sentence elaboration. You provide a basic sentence. And that sentence, again, is related to students' lives, the text, the curriculum area. Students are able to see the basic structure of the sentence before adding parts. And the goal is to make it better, different, more interesting. They're playing with the sentence. And they can elaborate while retaining meaning. Make it funnier, more exciting, shorter, longer. Make it a scary sentence. Add a specific part. Add a noun, add a verb, add a clause. I like students doing this in pairs or small group. It's a conversation that takes place. And again, the purpose is to see the basic structure of a sentence before adding the parts. Here's an example. The woman cooked burgers on the grill. The old woman cooked burgers on the grill. Notice how I'm retaining meaning. There was a woman, there was some cooking, there was some burgers, and there was a grill. Large woman, get the idea. You get the idea. Here I ask students to insert a clause. The woman, who was very tired, cooked burgers on the grill. Sentence evolution, kind of another one. You change or add or take away one word at a time. It should be fun. The new sentence is written below. And again, small pairs are groups. You can hear the thinking of others. And I usually say 5 changes and you read them aloud to see where their sentences go. For example, Bill slipped on the ice. Change one word. Okay, change one word. Change or add. Take away. Change one word, and one word. So you can see, sometimes I have them just read the first sentence and the last sentence. And I read this aloud, share it, use your creativity and teacher intelligence here. 2 words is fun. Provide 2 words, either a noun, verb, etc. Students create sentences based on those 2 words or using those 2 words. And you could say create a short sentence, a big sentence, a funny sentence, a scary sentence, a green sentence. Humor and silliness should be encouraged. Again, they're playing with the idea. They see the sentence. A sentence must make sense in and of itself. For example, Pat and Pickle. Okay, Monster threw pickles at Pat. Pat likes to eat pickle ice cream. Silly, yes, silly is good, creative. Yes, Pat, who is in 5th grade, here's the clause, went to school on Monday with 7 slimy pickles in his pocket. You get the idea. Sentence must make sense in and of itself. I can ask them to insert certain things. Sentence shrink. We do this a lot at the graduate level, where concise, objective academic language is valued. Given a sentence, make it as concise as possible while maintaining the meaning of it. And you can extend it to paragraph to shrink it. All right. The crabby old man who was very hungry ran quickly down the long winding road on that dark and blustery night. All right. The man ran down the road that night or at night. Get the idea. Take away everything that does not need to be there. Editing. And again, remember the 5-step writing process. Editing does not occur until step 4. If you try to edit in any of these, you mess up the whole writing process. Editing, I'm going to show you some ideas for editing. But you must teach your students the process, how to edit, and teach them that it's okay to have errors. All writers need editors. And you teach them how to edit. You edit from whole to part to whole. Whole is you get your draft, your sloppy copy, all the words on the paper. That's the whole. And then part, you go sentence by sentence. Does that sentence make sense? Is it exactly the way I want? Can I get rid of anything? And then the next sentence. And then you focus just on that paragraph, interrepeated ideas, and just on that section. Whole to part to whole. And you provide little bits of structure. And a checklist is a great way to provide structure so they know exactly what to look for. And that checklist that you give students for editing is based on things that you have taught, based on the mini lessons that you have taught. And I'll show you some examples of these. And again, you must teach students whole to part to whole and provide structure with a simple checklist. Use the checklist to reinforce the skills you're teaching. You don't want to have too many skills. Just focus on the ones that you're teaching. Now, this is a simple checklist that I use for graduate level writing. And I'm using a lot of the same things that I taught in 1st and 2nd grade. I'm still working on at the graduate level. The nice thing about checklists, you can differentiate. If you have students of differing abilities, you can give one with maybe 1 or 2 things and another checklist with 4 or 5 things to different students depending on where they're at. Checklists are great ways to differentiate. Rubrics, stinking rubrics, I don't recommend them because they're just too complicated to be of much use. Here's the thing with rubrics you spend so much time on, and usually you have 4 or 5 characteristics for your different levels. This is a 4, 3, 2, and a 1. But this is the problem with rubrics. Usually you have 3 or 4 characteristics at each level. But what if students are really good at one and really bad at another? Do you give them a 4 if they're only good at one part and bad at another? What do you do? Rubrics just too complicated and cumbersome to be of much use. Keep it simple, keep it simple. This is what I'm looking for. You can put a check mark or a rating system or however you choose to do it. All right, we're going to talk about 2 specific ways of peer editing. It's called a skills expert table and professional editing table. Set and pet, adopt and adapt, grades 2 through graduate school. Absolutely, absolutely. Now, a skills expert table. This is where students edit each other's paper. It's a very indirect way and a very powerful way to learn about spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And this is done a minimum of 2 people, usually 3 or 4 at a table. And again, the conversation that takes place enhances the learning about grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Here's how it occurs. You designate one day or date for editing papers. Everyone knows that their paper is going to be edited on that day, so they should have something ready to edit. You identify 3 to 8 skills, depending, related to grammar, spelling, and punctuation. 2 to 4 students to a table, and at each table, you are to look just for that one skill, that one focus area. Maybe your skill is to look for complete sentences, or paragraphs, or whatever it is, or commas, or whatever it is. That's all you look at that table. So you have 2 or 3 students looking just at that skill. You pass out the unedited tables of papers to different tables. They look just at that expert area, and when they're done editing, they pass it along. So I would say after 20 or 30 minutes or 40, the papers will have gone all around the classroom and been edited. And again, it's the conversation that takes place that is helpful. Skills expert table. Several tables look at one element each. The professional editing tables, one table looks at several elements. This is what this is. You have students, 2 to 3 students, they edit. You have a parent, paraprofessional, or older student working at each table. They look at all the elements. And only those students who have completed steps 1 through 3, pre-write, draft, revise, and have done an initial edit, they can bring their paper back to have edited. And it's important usually to have a parent or older student work with that person. So you designate one table for editing. Students who have finished revising and done an initial edit can bring their paper back to the professional editing paper. 2 or 3 students. And again, it's the conversation that takes place. And every student should get a chance to be an editor, no matter what their ability level. And it's okay if maybe they don't have all the skills. It's the conversation that's taking place as they look and analyze papers. Use a simple checklist so they know exactly what to look for. Adopt and adapt. Grammar treasure hunt. Adopt and adapt. This one. Use a textbook or a trade book, and after teaching some aspect of grammar, students look through a text that they've read. They look for examples of this thing that you've taught. That's an authentic writing context, a real book. For example, in grades 2, maybe I was teaching nouns. So I had them look for human nouns, different types of nouns, or maybe a verb. And they could put tally marks for each, or they could actually write them down. This is a data retrieval chart, by the way. It's a type of inquiry. I like to then, using tally marks, they can create their nice little bar graphs and compare one thing to another. Adopt and adapt. This can be done in kindergarten through graduate school. Sentence mix-up. Simply a sentence with the words mixed up. Writing is creating meaning with print. You put them to put words in order to create meaning. And metacognition, thinking, does this make sense? They need to put them so it's grammatically correct, so it makes sense. A sentence is one complete idea. Now, older students, you can have longer sentences on a sheet of paper, With younger students, we want them to physically manipulate kindergarten, first grade, maybe second grade. 3x5 cards, so they mix them around, or a sentence strip where you write a sentence, you cut them up, mix them up, and they have to put them back in order. What I like to do is have usually 2 or 3 sentences on the same color and mix them up so they see 2 sentences, maybe 3, and they have to put them back together again to create order, to make a sentence that makes sense. That metacognition, does it make sense? Use simple sentences. You can reinforce letter sound patterns again. Short I sound or the ill sound. You can include capital letters and punctuation for clues depending. And again, pre-post reading activities or design sentences related to the story. Now this is called Be the Word. You had a sentence cut up into strips and each student is given a word. You mix them up and they have to put themselves in order. And I go behind them and tap their head, and when you tap their head, they read their word aloud. Just fun, get them physically involved. Here's how I did sentence mix-up when I was tutoring online. I couldn't have students physically manipulate cards, so I showed them a mixed-up sentence. Tell me when you know what it means. And usually by here, they could figure out what the sentence means. An implicit understanding of the structure of the language. This also helps reinforce the syntactic cueing system, by the way. And I would do maybe 3 or 4 of these. This would take 2 to no more than 6 minutes. Quick, quick, quick. Get on to the business of reading. Get on to the business of writing. Sentence alteration. Students are given a sentence. They try to say the same thing using different words or different word order. Groups are great. You can make this a game. See how many different ways you can say the same thing. Read the different versions of the same sentence. For example, Randy packed his lunch in a bag. See the different versions. You see the different versions. You see the different versions. All right, I wanted to reinforce the short I sound, so I simply included a short I word here. Again, these could be pre-post reading activities, design sentences related to the story, say the same thing using different words or different word order. Will you fill my glass? Can you fill my glass? Put more in my glass. It means the same thing. You are creating, meaning different words or word order. Adopt and adapt, kindergarten through graduate school. My graduate students are still working on this. You know, you've got a long sentence. How else can you say this more efficiently, more effectively? So, 3 big ideas starting in kindergarten. And these are probably reinforced in kindergarten, but at the graduate level, I'm still teaching these 3 big ideas. A sentence is one complete idea. It makes sense by itself. In the real world, we don't like long, flowery sentences. In the real world, we want short, concise sentences that make sense in and of themselves. Big idea number 1. Big idea number 2. A paragraph is a group of similar ideas. When you start a new idea, start a new paragraph. And here's the thing, if you actually analyze real paragraphs and real textbooks in professional writing, the idea that there's a topic sentence in each paragraph, not so. Not so. A paragraph is a group of similar ideas. There's not always a topic sentence. And the third idea, a paragraph should make sense in and of itself. You shouldn't have conceptual leaps from one thing to the next. It should make sense when you read it by itself. When it's read by itself, sorry. All right, I'm going to end with 7 common grammar errors. And this probably won't be in the webinar because I see I'm already at 44 minutes here. So some common grammar errors. And if you get my book, Academic Writing Process and Product, you can see these. But first, riddle me this, Batman. How do you identify the indirect object of a prepositional phrase? Well, you don't, if you want to get any writing done. So, a couple things. Stay consistent with tense. Common error. If you use a particular tense, in the first part of a sentence or paragraph, you must use it throughout. John read the paper and took a nap, past tense. He sleeps, present tense. Nope. John read the paper and took a nap. He slept, past tense. John reads, takes, sleeps, present tense. John will, then takes, will, future tense. Yes. Stay consistent with plurality. Now here's the thing with gender pronouns, this is changing. Plural is now acceptable to describe a person so that you can remain gender neutral. Used to be incorrect, but is now correct. A person, singular, should always have their, plural, notebooks. That's correct, and I'm glad. It takes a lot of the confusion and clumsiness. A person should always have a notebook. People should always have their notebook. These are all correct. The class, singular, improved their, plural. Nope, that is that's incorrect. Excuse me. The class improved its score. People in the class improved their score. Plural, plural, singular, singular. Used to be correct, incorrect, but it's now correct. A person should be allowed to remove their. Yep. People should be allowed to remove their. Plural, plural. Yep. A child should be, yes. That is a little clumsy. We don't like that anymore. A child often worries about their, correct, but a little clumsy. Children often worry about their. Children often worry about the. You always want to have efficient, effective writing. Okay, here's one that people get mixed up a lot. Double pronouns and noun pronoun combinations should make sense when one is missing. A pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun. For example, personal pronouns such as I, me, you, him, and she take the place of a name or a proper noun. And here are some common pronouns. Now to figure this out, figure out the correct pronoun, you read the sentence with each of the pronouns or pronoun-noun combinations separately. If the sentence makes sense, you have the correct pronoun. What am I talking about? Me and her will go to the store. Me will go to the store. Her will. Nope, that does not make sense. See how I read each part by itself? She and I will go to the store. She will. I will. Yep. Lisa and her. Lisa played golf. Her. Nope. Her and Lisa. Her played golf. Lisa. Nope. Lisa and she played golf. Lisa played. Yep. She and Lisa. Yes. Use that for essential clauses and which for non-essential clauses. Now, a clause is a part of a sentence, and this sounds more complicated than it is, that contains a subject or a noun or a predicate, which is a verb or action. So the essential clause is one that is essential to maintain the meaning of the sentence. Now, here's an essential clause. The team that worked hard won the game. That's essential because it says, my meaning is, there was more than one team. One team worked hard. There were other teams that did not work hard. Of all the teams, it was the one that worked hard that won the game. So the team that worked hard won the game. We use that. It's an essential clause. We don't have any commas there. Non-essential clause, it's like a theatrical aside. It adds dimension to the idea, but the meaning is still largely intact if the clause were not there. For non-essential, you use the word which with a set of commas. Now, I always insert which, by the way. The team, which, by the way, worked hard, won the game. If you can insert by the way, and it still makes sense. So, the team won the game. There may or may not have been other teams. It doesn't matter. It just so happens that that team worked hard. The team, which, by the way, worked hard, won the game. If the phrase which, by the way, could be inserted for which, and it still retains the desired effect, use the word which with commas. That, use the word that to indicate that that particular one, when there's more than one choice. Of all of them, that particular one, the team that worked hard won the game. That particular one. That's how you remember. Use that and which for non-human entities, who to indicate humans. As described earlier, commas should always be used to indicate non-essential clauses, whether that, which, or who is used. Correct essential clause. Those students that bought Andy's book received higher grades. That's incorrect. Students is a human thing. Those students who bought Andy's book received higher grades. Of all the students, those students who bought Andy's book received higher grades. That's essential to the meaning I'm trying to create. Correct non-essential. The stores, which, by the way, sold Andy's book, earn more money. Which, that stores is non-human, students are human. Correct essential. The stores that sold Andy's book earned more money. Of all the stores, those that sold Andy's book earned more money. Use who if you can substitute he or she in a sentence. Whom if you can substitute him or her. One way to remember is M for him or her. That goes with whom, and there's an M in whom. Who, she, he. The player whom you picked scored 27 points. He scored 20, her scored 720. That doesn't make sense. Instead, she scored 27 points. The player who you picked scored 27 points. Who? He, she. Who scored 27 points? She scored 27 points. Incorrect. Whom sang the song? Her sang the song. No, no. Who sang the song? She. She sang the song. Who sang the song? She did. Please describe the boy whom was at the event. Him was at the event. No, he was at the event. He goes with who. Please describe the boy who was at the event. Whom, her, him. The person who I am referring to is missing. I am referring to he. No, I'm referring to him. I'm referring to him. The person to whom I am referring is missing. I'm referring to him. Incorrect. Bill talked to a clown who he met at the circus. Bill talked to he. No, Bill talked to him. Him. M. Whom. Bill talked to a clown whom he met at the circus. Bill talked to him. Who did you give the cookie to? Did you give the cookie to he? Did you give the cookie to him? I gave the cookie to him. So, him, whom? To whom did you give the cookie? Did you give the cookie to him? Him, her, whom? Do not end the sentence with a preposition. And you'll find this one is fudged a lot in professional writing. Preposition links a noun or pronoun to some other word in a sentence. You can remember this. Preposition, the last 8 letters, position. It tells the position of something. In, above, with, through. Here are some common prepositions. You don't want to end the sentence with a preposition. Incorrect. Who are you going to the game with? Preposition with. With whom are you going to the game? In the paper, there were grammar errors throughout. Nope. There were grammar errors throughout the paper. They came by. They came by the house. Get the idea. Time to come in. Time to come in the house. Some basic ideas there. All right. This has been a pre-recording of a webinar. Hopefully you can join us on December 11th.